I'm here with actor Justin Davis, who has been acting for quite a long time, or at least has been interested in show business for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Why don't you take me on that journey? It started when you were 3, right?
Yeah, it started when I was 3. It's funny. My aunt was taking me to, or took my cousin to like dance lessons, and there somebody said, "Oh, it's a cute kid. You should get him into like the business, take him around like commercials and stuff." And it started out small like that. She took me to some things, and then I got really shy, and then at like 8 or 9, I did like this play at this Catholic school I went to, and I told them that I wanted to do it for the rest of my life, and I've been doing it.
Well, it worked out for you, obviously.
Yeah, yep.
You went to the Professional Performing Arts School, right?
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in New York City, and so growing up here, there was a show called Taina when I was a kid on Nickelodeon. She went to like the Manhattan School of the Arts, and since I was in like 7th or 8th grade, I thought, wow, I want to do this forever. There's that show. She goes to school for something that she loves to do. I would love to be able to do that too, and I found PPAS. And one thing I've always been like really, really big about is like small communities and family settings, and that's exactly what PPAS was and is. I think it's like 400 kids that go there between middle and high school, and ended up being awesome.
You also did a little modeling, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
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 That was a stepping stone to get into acting a little bit further?
Yeah. Growing up, my family didn't want me to miss school and miss things, and they said, well, a way to kind of like get into this field and in the door also, and a way to also still be kind of like on top of school and stuff is to start a modeling, and that's kind of how it started. And from there, I mean, it was also with my commercial agent that all of those things ended up coming about, and
Right.
so they kind of went hand in hand. Modeling and print ended up going hand in hand with like on-camera commercial.
And then you were in this little known movie, Taking of Pelham 123, with some unknown actor named Denzel Washington.
Yeah, I don't know who.
Maybe he'll break through and people will know who he is.
No, yeah, that was an amazing experience too. And then to work with the late Tony Scott too, before everything had happened, it was amazing to be in that space. And I think that was probably one of the first bigger things that I had actually done. And so to go through that process and then still be that age was awesome. It was awesome.
Was it challenging insofar as that you were young and you needed to have a lot more discipline than maybe you were ready for?
Not so much discipline, because I think, or what I always wanted to do was be in that space. Be on set was something that it made my blood boil, and the thrill of it.
In a good way, not
no, of course, yeah, no.
You're like, I hated that Tony guy. I wanted to punch him.
No,
right
I
in the face.
loved it. It was like it was a very visceral experience, and it was always a very surreal experience, especially then. So the discipline wasn't there. I was always very engaged by everything that was happening, and I think for me it was about disengaging a little bit, because I wanted to know what everyone was doing, like what the director was doing, what he was up to when I didn't see them, like what their process was. And I think that was why I've always been so attentive, not to just acting but also trying to get into other fields too.
Is that something you're interested in?
Yeah.
Is they like writing and directing?
Yeah.
Do you think that being an actor helps you in those?
Yeah,
separate
definitely.
parts?
Yeah, I ended up getting my undergrad BFA from Brooklyn College, and one of the courses that we took there was directing, and I thought it was very important, not just for an actor to be able to act, but to be able to step into the director's shoes and to understand from their side their vision, or their communication process too, because I think that's one of the biggest things for an actor to be able to do, and for a director to be able to do, is to understand communication with your performer, and to be able to really give into what they're looking for and understand them in a different way.
And before you went to college, you were cast on Boardwalk Empire, correct?
Actually, while I was there.
While you were there,
Yeah.
and then you finished college while you were on it. Right?
Yeah. That I finished. So at the time I was at Brooklyn College, I was able to start my major, credits towards my BFA, the first 3 years versus the last. Started my first semester. And so my last year, I ended up just taking academic classes, which was a little difficult, especially going to PPAS. Everything was kind of paired with an arts class.
Right.
But it was great, because in that last semester, in that last year, I was able to, or I'd booked Boardwalk, and I was able to play in that arena too. So it was difficult to kind of get everything done and graduate on time and still be a full-time student, taking 18 credits a semester, and then running away to work and to do what I loved. And that's one thing I was very, very it was very important to me that I was able to still work, if anything, while I was going to school, especially, you know, to craft and build the relationships that I had. I never wanted to cut anything off, and if I couldn't go to school while I was working, then I said, oh, I'll wait a little bit.
Well,
But it worked
I would
out.
think they would be a little bit more understanding since that's what you're going to school for,
Yeah,
right?
at that time, it's interesting. A lot of BFA programs, they want you to really be able to study and be very committed to that and not be distracted by things like outside work. And I didn't have any frustrations, and neither did the department there. And by the time Boardwalk had come on and I was cast, everybody was kind of pleased that there was still somebody at Brooklyn College working and going to school.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
And then in 2018 and 2019, you've really been
Yeah.
you hit the ground running, man.
Yeah, I mean,
got a lot of credits to your
No, I'm just in a
your
boat.
resume.
No, no. This year and last year have been great. I had the opportunity to work with, you know, the amazing cast of Chicago Med, and, you know, 4 or 5 other shows along the way, and some of them haven't even come out yet, and
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. But
Chicago Med, you played a burn victim?
yeah,
Yeah,
I
what
played.
was that like? Had to be intense.
That was intense, and one of the things that I do, especially when it comes to roles of that caliber, is really try to get into the understanding of the person and into their mindset and, you know, their background and what they would be going through. So a lot of my research ended up being like burn units and, you know, conversations with doctors and surgeons and understanding the process of, you know, what happens when you're burned, and then, you know, healing and time duration and all of that. And the pain, I thought that was the most interesting thing, and your breath, which I think for acting is very important. You know, they always say breathe, and, you know, especially with a role like that deals with such depth, breath and, you know, attention to breath is very important.
How long did it take you to get your makeup done for that? Because it wasn't like you burned your hand on a spoon.
No, and it
every
was a
inch
few
of you, but
days,
your face was covered in burns.
Yeah, it was about 4.5 hours each morning that we shot. So
That's
it'd
a long time.
I think my call times sometimes were like 3:45 a.m., 4 a.m., and then we'd be in the chair until about 8 when it was time for rehearsal.
Was it uncomfortable to try and act with the...
It wasn't actually, because it's really cool the way I think their FX department over at Chicago Med and really all of the Chicago shows are just, it's great. But their effects are really cool. It almost looks like a tissue paper, but it's like fish scale skins or something like that. And then they go in and they're able to apply like alcohol, and it's like treated things to look as though it is, you know, but it's fun. It's a process that I always wanted to do, and I was happy to do it.
Look
with
how
them.
cool it looked too.
Yeah, it looks amazing. Yeah.
You could freak people out. Say, look what happened to me.
I always said if I could do it for Halloween, if I could be Carter Singleton for Halloween, I would. But I don't have an effects department behind me.
Well, maybe they'll come.
Unless,
Maybe since you mentioned them in this interview, they'll fly into the city this year. You also were on Manifest this first season. Any chance you could return?
Well, it's always in the air.
Literally, well, no, it's not. That was the problem.
Yeah. It's the problem with them is that everything's connected. But Manifest was always, even before I got casting on him for it, it was something that I thought was a very, very well written show, and I thought the concept of it was like something I never heard. So I said, oh my gosh, getting the chance to go in and read for it was amazing, and then actually working on it was great. And in this next season, I'm hoping that they bring me back, and there's going to be a few more twists and turns.
Yeah.
But it's all in the air.
Yeah. Pardon every pun that you can make, right? Have your episodes of Madam Secretary and Instinct aired yet?
Yeah. Instinct actually hasn't come back. It'll be back later this month. It starts back June 30th. So that'll be running the course of the summer. And then Madam Secretary, yes, I was in this last season. But with him, I was also told that I didn't die off, and I'm somewhere in the White House underground, so I could come back there too.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It's great that you picked all these shows to tape in New York. So
I mean, it's my team. I have an amazing team, and I'm really appreciative of all of them.
Now you're also going to be in the show The Politician that comes out this year.
That's still it's still so
New.
Still so new, and so tight that I'm trying to make it back for another season. So
we'll just say you're in it.
We'll say that there's some new things happening that are going to be very exciting to watch out for.
That's awesome. And now, one of the things that I always joke about with actors, especially New York actors, is you haven't really made it until you've done a Law and Order and a horror movie, and you have done both.
Well, Law and Order I did when I was very young, but it wasn't in the same caliber as I was able to do with like Chicago Med, and because he has so many shows that he's doing now, Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, PD.
Yeah.
So I found my way back into the Dick Wolf entertainment world, but Law and Order, especially with another show that they've kind of delayed, is something I would love to really sink my teeth into.
But you did do that horror film, Bloodbound.
Yes, I did.
What was that experience like working on a horror film?
That was a great experience as well. We did it up in Barryville, New York, and I don't know if you know it, but it's small. It's right off the side of the Delaware River, and we called the campsite that we were on Camp Crystal Lake because it was just like cabins around a small pool, and like there was like one street light for about 1.5 miles, and nothing there. So it made for really great like scenic views and great establishing shots, and great background work when it came to seeing the story. That was an amazing experience because I got to work with one of my friends from high school, Eric Nelson, and
I'm sorry that you have to deal with him.
I know it's terrible. No,
it's rough.
No, Eric is great, and that experience was great too because he and Eden Brolin and we all played like best friends, and it was not something that I was used to playing, which is definitely why I wanted to do it. Just a little bit of like Brian's background was he had some substance issues. He had some things in the town, and the three of them, when they got together, they weren't necessarily the best kids in town. So I had the opportunity to play something that I didn't normally play, and with some people that I knew and then didn't know, and we were away and did overnights for about a month in this small town, with limited phone access and service, and so it really became like an actor boot camp, and that's something that I really fell in love with too.
Were you also friends with Max Eric? Did you?
I wasn't at the time, or I wasn't at the time. No, but PPAS ended up being a small place of kids.
Now you also do some philanthropic work, if I'm not mistaken. You work with inner city kids.
I was working with. I mean, it's been very important to me because I grew up as an inner city kid, and I was able to find PPAS and Manhattan School of the Arts, but I delved into my passions very early on, and I feel like with kids, children especially, it's very important to give them the opportunity to, and to let them know that they can, and that their dreams are valid, and that they can really shoot for whatever they want and still achieve it, and nothing is too big. So that's when I first started with Minisync, which was it really worked with inner city schools and implementing arts programs around the city. That's what one of my main goals was to bring in kind of like those art programs, even if it was into after school, and try to really instill the arts, acting, music, dance, even fine art, any way I could. And now the program is it's not working. I'm not affiliated with them at this point, but I was happy with where they were when we were working together, and it's something that I still want to do into the future.
I was going to say, is that something you would continue with when your celebrity grows, and maybe even have a foundation or be part of one?
I would love to. I think if I didn't have, the wherewithal to say I want to do this when I was a child, and have a family that supported it, and like a community that really kind of inspired me to, then I don't know what I would have done. And if I can do that for another child and really let them know that there is this, you don't need to be stuck in certain positions, you can still do what you love and create a living out of it, then I would love to do that.
I was going to say that must be as equally gratifying as any of your parts have been.
Yeah, it is.
What have been some of your most challenging roles, and why?
My most challenging roles, one I would say was, two of them I'll say. One of them were Boardwalk Empire. I wasn't as fluent or affluent in the piano as my character was, so learning that, and then learning that for television, and then even still, now I still try to pick up some sort of instrument, because I found out that knowing an instrument is very important. But learning that, and really getting into with Chicago Med, the mind space and the headspace of this burn victim, and for that episode, the guilt was all on me, because in the beginning I'd kind of lied about what was happening and how everything happened. So to understand the pressure and the weight of the moment and the pain that a person's going through. Delving into that, because I'm a classic actor in the sense that I go and I take everything and I write it down first. I do my character analysis, I do script analysis, I do all of that process, and then get into it and kind of toss it all away. So some of the roles, like burn victim roles or things of a certain depth, they do end up having a little bit more writing to it, and more research and kind of in tangible and visceral experience that you kind of you delve deeper into it. So that would be the two.
How do you decompress when you're like so gung-ho into this research and you're like, God, this has really happened to somebody, and they're living with this kind of trauma?
Through art, through like painting. I used to paint some, oddly, and through doodling. And it's weird, but I ever since, like, I was always a big GTA fan. I still try to decompress. Like, I try to, like, go back to the nostalgia of what I did when I was a kid. So sometimes a video game even helps, but just ways to, like, still reground. And I spend time with family and all that stuff, and realize, and I mean, it's one thing for me. I've always been kind of able to disconnect, because it's the work that I've built, and then at the end of the day, there's still the person that I am. So for me, disconnecting to a character that's very much in you hasn't been too difficult for me. But those are just a few ways, through art and the people around me.
And you've done some theater. Is that something, being that you're based in New York, that you would really like to fulfill? A bigger dream?
Yeah, one of the things that I always said, I've lived in New York my entire life. One of the things that I wanted to do, at least before I moved to California, because that's something that I do think about pretty frequently, especially after just returning. One of the things that I want to do, though, is be on stage here. And I said I wanted to guest star on a few roles and co-star and do these things, but I really want to be back on the New York stage. That, for me, I was trained in theater, and even when I was growing up, I said, television is where I want to be. But now that I've had the chance to play in that area, I really want to be back on stage. And it's something about the live performance and the interaction with the audience, their energy, and the energy of those around you. And you only get one chance to get it in. So the storytelling from that aspect is great.
Too, invigorating.
But the casting director, it's always but in an audience, you hear them, you feel their emotion, and that's something that you don't play into, but it feeds you as an actor, and then especially when you're performing, it feeds your performance too.
You seem to have a huge sense of maturity about you, just in the way you speak.
Thanks.
Obviously, we did not know each other before we sat down together, but in the way you compose yourself. And has that helped you get roles that maybe would have been suited maybe for a tad older of a person? Because you obviously look like you'd still play an 18-year-old as well. So.
Thank you. So on Chicago Med, I played 16, and then on Manifest, I play like a lieutenant. And I think it definitely has to do with, understanding both sides of it. I always say it's now I can play 16 because I'm no longer 16. I've gotten out of that, and not that I can get into like the mindset of any 16-year-old. Like even in 2019, the things they go through now are just crazy, and I wouldn't even imagine it. But I can play it because I've been there and I've gone through that story. So even though I haven't been a lieutenant, now as I like you said, have that mature kind of, as I've gained and learned that mature kind of tone, I found it easier to kind of play between the two. I know how to turn it on and how to turn it off, and then when to like bring it down and young it up, and settle and be mellow and present and grounded.
What challenges have you faced personally in coming up through the ranks? We mentioned earlier you've had a great year this year, and it'll be 2 years if you think about it.
Yeah.
So what's that ride been like for you, working so hard and seeing it pay off?
Just understanding that I always make the reference that it's kind of a roller coaster, and there are ups and downs. But understanding that you're not always going to go down, that there's, it's going to go right back up. The reason it goes down is so that it can kind of propel you to the next moment. And there, equally, there aren't always times where you're on top, So for me, it's been creating that understanding and knowing that this is an industry where you have to have a thick skin, and you do have to be tough and kind of, very very strong about where you are, what you want, and where you want to go, and don't lose track of that. You know, one thing that I always said is that sometimes it's an industry that does push people out, but the right people who are supposed to be here will be
They'll
as
stay in it,
committed
yeah.
their entire life. And I'm not in this for like a microwavable career. You know, I'm in this for a journey. Put me in the oven, bake it, you know, let it simmer, and you know, over time create something that's worth having, a career worth looking back over. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I've always loved about it, that it's not, you know, it's not always instantaneous. And you know, for me, going throughout this entire career, it's not something that, you know, I wanted to go by in the blink of an eye. So longevity's been something I love, and it's
Yeah.
something I hope to keep up.
Before you get baked in that oven. I was like,
Right.
we went from the bloodbound to being baked in an oven.
I use a lot of metaphors.
I was
in
going to
life.
say, hopefully that wasn't the actual way you wanted to go, but
No, I just don't want to be microwave, because microwave you'll be done
too fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to be enjoyed and savored.
Yeah.
Whose career trajectory would you like to have a similar journey to?
Well, going back, I'm not so musically inclined, so I wouldn't say singing or rapping, but Will Smith coming up, he took a very, you know, he was a musician and then comedy, and then the show happened, and now he's Will Smith. I love the way his, you know, he kind of always has been a chameleon in that aspect, you know, and even, you know, now he's on Instagram, and there's this whole other kind of like way that you're able to see him. There's him, and then there's also Michael B. Jordan. I love the way his career is, you know, really grown in these last few years, and then throughout his entire career, coming from The Wire, and then even, you know, up until now with, you know, with everything with Black Panther and with Creed 2, and I watch very intensely, you know, transitions and how actors are able to move, because I think sometimes it's, you know, it's flawless, and while we don't see the gears kind of turning, it's still a machine, and the process of that machine is something that I've always been interested in, and those are just two of them, but those two especially.
You seem extremely grounded
Yeah.
right now, and if you did have that career trajectory of those two men, what would you have to do to stay that grounded, or do you think that's already just been instilled in you?
Well, I was raised by my grandmother and by my aunts, and so I think there's a bit of humility there, and humbleness that you have to be able to take that on, because, you know, from a performer side, it's like you're able to do all the things that you ever wanted to do, and then from the public side, it's like you're this actor now. But at the end of the day, I think for me, it goes back to just being that kid who loves, you know, working in this field and his passions, and has to be grounded. I think that's the only way it can happen. I think if once it happens and you're not, is when you fizz out kind of quick,
Yeah.
and when you don't necessarily make all the right decisions. And like I said, I'm in this for the long haul. So longevity and humbleness is something I've always known, and I think that's the only way to kind of keep it going, to, you know, to get to that place.
Yeah, you do seem extremely grounded, and we did talk about theater, and with the advent of all these different platforms and being able to have younger and older people putting out their own work, is it something you would like to do, to put up your own theatrical production, or
Yeah.
film your own movie, or you seem like you just have a lot of creative
There's a lot
juices
happening
flowing
up
between
here.
those ears? Yeah.
Yeah, I wake up a lot of mornings, and I mean, I think I've kind of done myself a disservice by not following through with a few things, but I wake up a lot of mornings, and there are thoughts, you know, just like any writer, you know, they say they can't get out until they get this down on the page. This has to be written down. I've had that many mornings myself, and one of my desires, and this kind of goes back to what we were saying, is to produce and direct, and, you know, even filmmaking one day. I think it's more than just acting. I love this industry for everything that it includes, and it's this art form that, you know, really gets my blood boiling.
Yeah.
But
Blood
it's
boiling, basted in an
baked
oven.
in the oven. Yup.
Making me hungry. Which sounds very creepy, but
Yeah. No, I mean, that's
no.
maybe
You
it's
have to
because
be
I'm hungry
passionate
too.
about.
but-
Yeah, you have to be passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah, it's something that I've always wanted to do, and it's something that I hope that acting gives me the opportunity to be able to do in the future.
Is there a certain role that you would really like to be cast in, or are there projects that are going up right now that you
Oh yeah.
wish that you had gone in for, or that
Oh,
they
well, that
passed
too,
on
yeah.
you, and do you think, without naming names, that you could have brought more to it or something different than the person that was cast and have it be shown in a different way?
Casting, there's been a lot of times where casting has told me, oh yeah, we're just going to go a different way, and sometimes that means it's all over the place with what that means sometimes, but there's definitely projects that I've gone in for that are out now. There are many projects that are out now that I've gone in for that I love the work that they're doing, and I see exactly where they're going, and I thought, oh well, the work that I would have brought to it would have been a little different, so that might have been a little different for the storyline or whatever. But there are many projects out there that are going on now that I wish I had gone in for it, that I had and hadn't. I can't say that I would have ever done anything better because what they're doing is best for them.
Right.
But I know what I would have done would have been my best. Yeah.
What do you do to deal with the rejection? We brought it up a little bit earlier about how if you go into a casting, you may not be tall enough, you might be too tall, you might be too skinny, you might not be light skinned enough, you might not be dark skinned enough, you might not be Asian, obviously, but like, is there is there a point where hopefully it will become an actor goes in for a role? It doesn't matter your color, your creed, your gender, any of that. Like, hopefully that comes down the pike sooner rather than later. I mean, I know in certain things they have people in mind, but it would just be nice for it to be
More
Justin comes in
yeah.
for the role of so and so, and it's not so boiled down to a specific nationality
spec,
or
yeah. Well, I can say there have been a few projects that, while there have been equally the number of projects that have, they've gone a different way, there have been a few projects where the different way was me. Just like Manifest, I don't think that was so specific when it came down to type. I think it was, ethnically, it was ethnically open, ethnically ambiguous. There's no kind of set type toward it. So I have been blessed in that, especially with my team over at Boardwalk, to kind of see both sides of that, where it's very much specific to the type of person that you are, and they'll send me in for things that are like colorblind casting as well, so that I'm in the soup, but the whole thing is, there's another.
I was going to say there's
I don't know what's going on today.
You better go get food after this is over.
But just being in the mix, and I've had the opportunity to kind of play both of those, and that may also go back to grounding and all of that too. But that's one thing that I can't wait to see in the future too, kind of more of that, and it's one thing that I definitely don't mind happening right now, because shows like Manifest, shows that are new and kind of like really fresh and creative, those are shows that I love, and so if they keep things like that happening and casting like that,
and being based here in New York, there's so many shows now that film here, and with Netflix and all that other stuff. I mean, you weren't on a superhero show on Netflix, so that was good.
Well, there was almost that too.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the best thing about being able to do this over time is I've literally been in just about every room, and I have gotten and gained really great relationships with these casting directors, and I think that's what this industry is all about. I just did this music video for Amber Mark called What If, her song that she just is her new single, and that came up because of Instinct. It was my co-star on Instinct, Rowan, and he has a friend who's in London and is one of her creatives, and he said, do you know anybody that is available? And relationships ended up being huge because he hit me up, I was available, ended up doing that. So the thing about this is I've had the opportunity to be in many rooms and really grow with some of these people and gain these relationships, but it just goes back to, it's all about, it's a business of who you know and really being in it for the long run.
But you also have the talent, which I think is also very
talent
important.
also helps.
Yeah.
Talent helps. Talent
and
helps
you got that
lot.
in spades, so
Yes.
you could slip that 5 over right now.
I always wish I was a really good spade player.
Yeah.
But one day. If I always say I can't do much, but being an actor, you kind of have to know how to do everything. So
Yeah.
maybe one day spades will be like the thing that I have to learn next.
What are you gonna do this summer to unwind and take a bit of a break?
I try to be active in the summer, but I just got back from California, and this time it ended up being a trip versus work
Yeah.
situation. So I was able to see San Francisco and LA and San Diego and even parts of Mexico. And that's what I really want to do this summer too. Maybe not California again, but travel more and see places that I haven't been. I haven't been to Europe yet. I haven't worked in Europe yet, but that's some place that I've always wanted to get to. So.
Well, you're an incredibly talented, well-spoken young man, and I love what you are doing with the inner city youth. And
Thank you.
it's so important to have role models who people can look up to and
Yes.
see. He came from a similar situation, and look at what he's doing. So the fact that you do that just speaks volumes about you
so
just as a human being. So I wish you continued success, and hopefully when the politician comes out, we can sit down and talk a little bit more.
Yes, we'll talk then. We can
Sounds
talk
good.
all about it then.
See, I tried to rope you back in, maybe spoil something, but it's not going anywhere. So
We'll talk about it all then.
yeah,
I can't
before you bring up food again.
Well, I don't know. I'm feeling saucy, so you never know. No.
Let's keep it going then.
I don't know. I dance a little too, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Awesome. Justin, thank you so much. It's been
Thank
such
you.
a pleasure, and
Thank you.
really appreciate your time.
thanks.